Ayo, Bladman here. So today's Thursday, and it's Throwback Thursday, so in a weird way, I'm going to kind of do that, but also talk about some nerdy things, because I thought, why not, should we not talk about the nerdy things? This is good plan. So, when I was younger, and even still to this day, I was very fascinated with the concept of armed conflict, of warfare, and the different strategies that would be used, and this and that, and what kind of clothes they'd wear, armor and swords and all these things. And it was very interesting to me. And I actually kind of feel a little bad for my parents because they kind of struggled with this like thing. And there was actually a cute story about it where I was a young kid and they got me a bunch of like toy guns and swords and stuff like that. And one day they saw me in the backyard and I had like the swords in my back and guns here and guns in my waist and all this stuff. And it was like this whole thing. I had every single one of my weapons, my pretend weapons. And they had this thought where they were just like, maybe that's not a good thing. So they decided to take him away and not have to do it because they didn't want their son to, I guess, to become like a serial killer or mass murderer or something like that. And what was interesting is the very next day, I was again outside and I'm fighting pretend bad guys or whatever. But instead of all the toy guns and swords, I had sticks. So I was literally doing the same thing, but I had like 2 sticks and a stick here and a stick there, and using a stick as a machine gun. And I was doing the same exact thing, just without the toys. I just made my own toys. So anyways, after that, my parents were like, well, I guess it doesn't really matter. He's going to do it anyways. He's going to kill imaginary bad guys, no problemo. So, I vaguely remember that, but it's a good story. Anyhow, so in the process of getting stuff, I got all the stuff like G.I. Joes, Army Man, you name it. And as I aged up a little bit, there was this cool thing I found in the mall near where I lived, or close to where I lived. And what they had in there is they were like army men, but just army men extraordinary. They were fully painted. They looked amazing. And there was 2 worlds. There was fantasy world, and then there was science fiction world. So swords and shields versus guns, basically. And I got into the guns one because that was just cheaper to get into at the time. The rules were cooler and yada, yada, yada. You didn't have to paint as many guys. Because I really wasn't into like the gluing and the painting. That wasn't really my jam. My jam was having these guys, and then you have rules, and then you could use I wanted it for the strategy element of it. So I did that for a while, and then I kind of got out of it, as one is wont to get out of stuff. When you're younger, you get super into a thing, and then you kind of lose it. But I have never, ever really lost my profound curiosity with this concept of warfare and stuff like that. So I still will play games, video games or otherwise, but I kind of got out of the hobby thing. Now, how this is related and what the overall subject is that I wanted to talk about is I've actually read quite a bit of books in this universe. Now, fascinatingly enough, to my understanding, this is what's called a tabletop game. Like, you play it on the table, okay? And again, it's not the barrier to entry. Yeah, you can buy this stuff, but then you have to glue them. And then you got to learn and paint all your guys yourself, or pay someone to pay it for you. And then you have all these rules that you got to learn. And so it's not like just pick it up and go. But what's very fascinating is what came out of this tabletop game is this whole series of books. And I have not read them all. There's so many to read. And the universe, what it's called is the Warhammer universe. And then, so that's fantasy. And then there's the Warhammer 40,000. So 40,000. So many numbers. And I will just say this. If you at all like science fiction, I highly suggest you read a book. And if you're curious, post a comment, and I will tell you, hey, where's a good place for you to start? Because this world, in my opinion, blows every other science fiction world out of the water. And even fantasy. There's some really good fantasy, so I don't know if I'd say that. But as far as science fiction, the sheer scale of this surpasses everyone else, bar none. Like, just, you have wars, you have entire planets that are wars, or galaxies duking it out, and whole races where there's billions of soldiers on each side duking it out. And it's not like you're following the commander going over. It's usually following like one person and how they do this thing and how they're trying to get the main person, cut off the top of the, the head of the snake, and then everything else. But I will say this, it's very interesting to read. And one thing, I was enjoying them because you read them and it's like the good guy overcomes these amazing, intense, ridiculous obstacles. But it kind of makes sense considering how, not superhuman as in like the Marvel sense, but how genetically enhanced and how armored these soldiers are, and how their singular purpose is to destroy Xenos, to destroy enemies of humanity. So if you have a singular drive, like imagine, what is it, 10,000 hours to like perfect something, right? But imagine if it's 10,000 plus 10,000 plus 10,000 plus 10, 100,000 hours of one subject and one subject only. Like, you'd be really, really good at that one subject. And that's kind of what these people are. And I'm not going to tell you it's like the best literary thing ever. But I will say it is very fascinating and enjoyable, and has been terrifically enjoyable for me to read. So I suggest it to anyone who's remotely interested in the topic, because unlike a lot of science fiction or fantasy or books in general, where they kind of like, they stick in their lane and this is all they do. And I will say that this does do a degree of that. But in that lane, they have so many different flavors. So it's akin to being like, oh, well, I'm an ice cream person as opposed to a cake person. Well, great. There's like 50 different ice creams you can try in this world. And you can find your flavor that you like and just ride that. And there's dozens of books, or you can find another flavor, or you can like try some others. And like, then you got like a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It's very, very fascinating. So again, Warhammer 40K as far as book reading. And I don't know, it's just interesting. Another thing I like about it is, because a lot of science fiction gets into, oh, all this technical cool stuff and this and that. And this world, the 40K universe, tends to stay, like at least the humans, they're kind of technologically backwards. Yes, they have space exploration. Yes, they can do this and they can do that. And there's genetically enhanced humans and yada, yada, yada. But interestingly enough, humankind went up and peaked at this point and then crashed down, and just totally things went south. And this is humanity coming from that point, and they're trying to go up, but now there's a lot more players in the universe that are competing for who's top dog. And it's really like a King of the Hill scenario, but the hill is the entire universe. Not a galaxy, the entire universe. And it's fascinating because there's so many different players who have their different objectives, and you can kind of just like, it's just fascinating. So again, I highly suggest it. And for the record, I'm not like an advocate for war. I could actually probably out-argue most people on why war is not the solution, not the right thing to do. However, I will say that war has contributed to other things. Like, and that's something that other people won't look at. They'll just be like, war is just bad. And I'm like, yeah, but also war, as gross as it is in many respects responsible for the advancement of science, the advancement of medical science, and many other things that we know and use today that are terrific. Like just this concept, the fact that I'm talking to you on the phone, I could post it online, like the internet, that is in no small part, responsible because of military investing in certain technologies that then later gets adapted and utilized for non-military personnel, like the internet. Don't quote me on that, but that's my understanding. So, anyways, all in all, I just kind of wanted to have a Throwback Thursday moment. And I was just talking to my lady about it, and I was really happy about it. I was just like, wow, yeah, this world is amazing. Like, the scale, you just have ships that make the Star Wars ships look puny. And the bad guys, just the raw scale, it's like, yeah, okay. You watch a Star Wars movie, and you're like, oh, cool, yeah, there's like a couple hundred people. Or even like Star Wars Episode 2 or 3, you're like, oh, yeah, there's battles where there's robots and then there's these guys and blah, blah, blah. But that's like a small component of the story. And you read these other books and you're just like, how? There's 1 billion soldiers and there's like 1 trillion enemy? What is that even? What? And you're just following these guys that have this other mission to try and do this and do that. And just the scale of everything is just amazing and monolithic and intense. It doesn't really hold anything back. It's worth reading. It's worth reading and checking it out. So that's kind of my weird Throwback Thursday for the day. I'll do another video tomorrow. I'm going to be helping my friend's parents move, so I'll be probably a little tired. But thank you all for tuning in. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Plaid Man out.